George Clooney might be celebrated for his striking looks and effortless charisma, but his legacy goes far beyond the allure of Hollywood. As one of the most influential actors in the world, Clooney has not only dominated the screen, but has also proven his exceptional talent behind the camera.
He was incredibly good looking, which I think is always very helpful for an actor, but he also did have the talent to kind of back it up.
However, Clooney's contributions extend beyond the realm of cinema. He uses his platform to advocate for causes he deeply believes in, seamlessly blending his art with activism.
He's become a huge advocate for refugees and for LGBTQ rights. We see him a lot of times really putting his money where his mouth is and being one of the people who really does step up.
Together with his wife, Amal, he co-founded a charity that aims to tackle some of the world's most challenging problems, demonstrating his commitment to making a difference. While some might assume that his path to stardom was paved by his famous aunt, the legendary Rosemary Clooney, George's journey was far from easy. Before achieving fame, he endured years of struggle and hard work, gradually building his career through perseverance and determination. This documentary delves into the life of George Clooney, exploring his rise to fame, his impressive body of work, and his unwavering dedication to activism and philanthropy. Join us as we uncover the many layers of George Clooney, a remarkable individual whose impact transcends the silver screen. In the small town of Lexington, Kentucky, George Timothy Clooney was born on May 6, 1961. Raised in a family with strong connections to the entertainment industry, Clooney's early life was steeped in the world of television and film.
So George Clooney comes from a showbiz background. His father worked in television, and his aunt was the singer Rosemary Clooney, so a very famous American singer from the middle of the 20th century who did the Great American Songbook. So I think when he first hit the scene, everyone was aware that George Clooney was related to Rosemary Clooney because she still had such a big name.
Despite his early exposure to the entertainment industry, George's initial passions laid elsewhere. He was an avid sports enthusiast, particularly in baseball.
Growing up, he was a very good student and wasn't really interested in acting at first. He was very sporty and wanted to play baseball and tried out, in fact, for the Cincinnati Reds when he was about 17, but unfortunately he wasn't successful and instead decided to go to university and become a journalist like his dad.
2 years later, George Clooney's life took an unexpected turn when his uncle Jose Ferrer and cousin Miguel visited Kentucky for a nearby film shoot. During this visit, Miguel offered George a job opportunity as an extra on the film set. This small break set off a chain reaction, prompting Clooney to question his journalism studies and consider a different path. Inspired by the experience, he began to wonder if Los Angeles might hold the key to his future, sparking a pivotal moment in his journey towards Hollywood stardom. After saving up enough money to buy a car, George Clooney drove off to Los Angeles with dreams of making it big in Hollywood. The plan was to move in with his aunt, Rosemary, and his cousin, Miguel, while working as a driver and auditioning for roles. However, George and Miguel started partying frequently. Seeing that George wasn't that focused on his career, Rosemary eventually kicked him out. He ended up moving in with his best friend, sleeping on a mattress on the floor for a year, struggling with little money and few auditions.
At that stage, he has so little charisma and screen presence. And so it's really interesting to think about what changes from that time in the early 1980s when he's on screen and you're thinking, that guy's a little awkward looking, to becoming this enormous screen presence and this very mature and confident screen presence. When he's younger, he has too much hair. He doesn't have a particularly flattering haircut.
Despite having relatives who were actors and kind of a father who was a little bit connected in the industry, he actually had to work quite hard to get his big break. And he, for a while, was starring in quite a lot of small, low-budget, quite bad films. There's a very memorable one called Grizzly 2 Revenge, which is about a killer bear and is regarded for being quite terrible.
Despite the common perception that George Clooney had an easy ride to fame, thanks to his famous Aunt Rosemary Clooney, his journey was far from smooth. He paid his dues in the industry, taking on roles in notoriously questionable films like Return of the Killer Tomatoes. These early gigs, far from glamorous, were essential in shaping his resilience and determination.
So I think something like that is a fascinating relic that proves that even someone like George Clooney had to really start at the bottom of the barrel when it came to his career.
Finally, in 1984, George Clooney's first breakthrough arrived, when he was cast in a TV series set in a Chicago hospital called E/R, not to be confused with the later series ER that would catapult him to stardom. Although the show only ran for 22 episodes before being canceled, it marked his first significant step into the industry.
He had quite a few small roles around this time, both on television and in film, and he was doing kind of guest spots on shows like Golden Girls and Murder, She Wrote, but he was really struggling to kind of break through properly for a couple of years, and it wouldn't be until the second ER in the 90s that he really found his big break and started getting noticed in Hollywood. So George Clooney joined ER right at the beginning when it was starting on NBC, and it was kind of a cutting-edge show. It was very grisly and very realistic and took this groundbreaking documentary style approach where there were multiple cameras and it was very, very fast-paced and had a lot of very technical dialogue. And George Clooney played Doug Ross, who was a paediatrician and a notorious ladies' man, which I think is kind of where his reputation as a ladies' man maybe started out. But the show was really a breath of fresh air on the networks in America and became incredibly successful almost overnight.
When it's working and you can feel when it isn't, or when it's mediocre. This show is, in every sense of the word, a classy show, and hits in general are time slots, and we have the best time slot NBC has to offer. So we are a very good show in a very good time slot. There is always a good sense that you will do well.
One of the reasons that ER was so popular was that it really was like nothing else that had been on television up until that point. It was very much different from the kind of scripted dramas that had come before, and there was a real sense of urgency to it, and it was incredibly dramatic, incredibly tense to watch, and had this incredible cast of characters who all felt very realistic and very lived in. And I think, particularly for Clooney, it was a real showcase for him, not only as a charismatic and kind of charming presence on screen, but also as someone with a real dramatic talent.
George Clooney, a name synonymous with Hollywood charisma and versatility, began his ascent to stardom in the mid-90s. His first breakthrough in the movie world came in 1996 with the film From Dusk Till Dawn, where he co-starred with Quentin Tarantino.
So From Dusk Till Dawn was a vampire film made in 1996 by Robert Rodriguez from a script by Quentin Tarantino, and this was a very different side to George Clooney than had been seen in ER. He was playing a pretty nasty criminal by the name of Seth Gecko, who was on the run after a bank robbery with his little brother Richie, played by Quentin Tarantino. So It's a very fun concept, I think, for a film, and I think that George Clooney really embraces his role within the kind of chaos, and it was the first time that he had found a role where he was playing a kind of scummy character, but still with this real kind of bad boy charm to him that I think a lot of people found quite appealing. But the film is also just really fun and really silly and a little bit scandalous for the time. I think that even by 90s standards, it was still considered a little bit shocking. And Tarantino was someone whose star was really starting to kind of rise at the same time as Clooney's. So I think the combination of Clooney, Tarantino, and Robert Rodriguez is really what made the film a kind of cult classic.
The following year, Clooney's star power was solidified when he was named People magazine's Sexiest Man Alive in 1997. This accolade further boosted his popularity and solidified his status as a leading man. It wasn't long before he landed what seemed to be the pinnacle of his career at the time, the role of Batman in Batman and Robin. Unfortunately, the film was a commercial and critical disaster, with many ridiculing the infamous batsuit adorned with nipples. The failure of Batman and Robin was a significant setback for Clooney, especially given the high expectations set by the success of previous Batman films.
So Batman is one of the kind of most enduring roles in Hollywood. I think that for any actor who takes on that role, they know not only do they have the weight of iconic performances on them, but of a very, very loud and very committed fan base who will let you know if they're not happy with a decision. And I think that it's difficult with such an iconic role, not only to put your own spin on it, but to do something that is going to make everyone happy. It's definitely a tricky one, and I think that any actor who has played the role of Batman will tell you that you are going to be criticised no matter what you do.
This was Michael Keaton's role, and will always be Michael Keaton's role. He did it first. Sean Connery is James Bond. You know, no one else. A lot of other people have done it, but it's Sean's role. So whenever you take over someone's role, you first have to accept the fact that it's not going to be yours, and so you try not to change the part too much. So I didn't go in saying let's just throw out everything and do something completely different. But by the same token, I thought it was time, and talked with the director Joel Schumacher about. I thought it was time that he stop talking about his parents being dead and feeling sorry for himself, because I think that heroes in general don't say woe is me, and don't. I think heroes perform admirably in tough situations and don't talk about it.
The fact that Batman had changed so many times within those years did mean that there was a little bit of a failure to find consistency, and there was something about Batman and Robin that just felt a little bit hokey, maybe a little bit amateurish. And now when we look back at it, it's definitely the one that seems the most slapstick, which I think was maybe not the vibe that fans were looking for at the time.
Chicks dig the car.
This is why Superman works alone.
There has been a bit more of an appreciation as time has gone on, but I think George Clooney, certainly even to this day, finds the whole thing a little bit embarrassing, and even in 2020 was apologising to Howard Stern about his role in it, which I think is very endearing, that he still finds it quite necessary to be sorry about how bad his Batman film was. But it's certainly something that fans, I think, are more willing to look back on now with a little bit more levity. And in 2023, he did play Bruce Wayne in a cameo in the Flash movie. So I think maybe Clooney has kind of come to terms with the fact that it wasn't as bad as he remembers it being.
Despite this setback, Clooney had the security of his ongoing role on the popular TV show ER, allowing him the luxury to be selective about his next project. This careful consideration led to his casting in Out of Sight in 1998, opposite Jennifer Lopez. Directed by the emerging talent Steven Soderbergh, the film was a resounding success.
So Steven Soderbergh had directed Sex, Lies and Videotape in 1989, and he became the youngest winner ever of the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, which is one of the biggest honours you can win as a director. So he'd started the 90s as a very exciting filmmaker and really one to watch, but he hadn't had that much success until Out of Sight. So the film was based on this novel by Elmore Leonard, who was quite a prolific writer, and Danny DeVito had bought the rights as a producer. So for Soderbergh, it was a chance to kind of find a little bit of redemption almost, and it felt like something quite different for him. It was definitely more light-hearted than some of his past work. And he brought in George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez, who would play the lead roles, and it really was a great combination of performers in that they brought this real charisma and a sort of sexiness to the film that I think appealed to a lot of people.
Well, does this make any sense to you?
It doesn't have to. It's something that happens. It's like seeing someone for the first time. Like you could be passing on the street and you look at each other, and for a few seconds there's this kind of a recognition. Like you both know something. The next moment the person's gone. And it's too late to do anything about it. And you always remember it because it was there and you let it go and you think to yourself, what if I had stopped? What if I had said something? What if? What if?
The movie marked the beginning of a fruitful collaboration between Clooney and Soderbergh, who would go on to create several critically acclaimed films together. With newfound confidence, Clooney decided to transition fully into Hollywood, necessitating his departure from ER. His exit episode was a poignant moment for the show, highlighting Clooney's significant impact on its success.
By the end of the 1990s, I think Clooney had recovered a little bit from the embarrassment of Batman and Robin not doing as well as I think everyone had hoped for. He had just decided that he was going to be leaving ER, so he was really in a good place to kind of start this next era of his career. And I think that Out of Sight was a good way of launching this new sort of era for Clooney. He'd already worked with people like Nicole Kidman, with Terrence Malick on The Thin Red Line, and he'd hosted Saturday Night Live, which was kind of the pinnacle for any actor of the time. So I think that by the time the millennium came along, he was really in ascent as a star, and I think that it was a sign of big things just around the corner for him.
Clooney continued to take on diverse roles, including a turn in the Coen brothers' comedic film, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Known for turning down more lucrative offers, Clooney prioritized working with directors and on projects he admired, demonstrating his dedication to the craft over mere financial gain.
So, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is the Coen brothers' take on the Odyssey, which is the epic poem by Homer from ancient Greece. Very amusingly, to this day, neither of them have read the poem. They were purely going based on how they thought it might be, which I think speaks a lot to their own kind of chaotic energy, which is really encapsulated by this film, which is so fun. And it really demonstrates, I think, Clooney's comedic timing and skill as a comedic actor, as well as how charming he is on screen.
It is a very unusual role for him. He usually plays men that are urbane, sophisticated, and intelligent, and here he's playing a kind of country bumpkin, a convict on the run with two other convicts. They've escaped from prison, and they're trying to find some buried treasure, and they have adventure after adventure. It's very episodic.
Is gentleman bothering you?
Well, you can't marry my wife.
And stay out of the wolf world.
He was able to deliver the Coens' very trademark, witty banter in a way that felt totally natural. And this definitely set the stage again for a very prolific friendship and working relationship with the Coens.
The film quickly became a cultural sensation, earning widespread acclaim and achieving notable box office success. George Clooney's performance was particularly lauded, earning him a Golden Globe for Best Actor. This accolade further cemented Clooney's reputation as a versatile and talented actor, proving he was far more than just his looks. Following the triumph of his recent films and his ascent as a Hollywood icon, George Clooney was determined to elevate his career even further. Reuniting with Steven Soderbergh, the duo launched a new production company, setting the stage for their next ambitious project, Ocean's 11. Clooney believed that a stellar cast was crucial for a blockbuster, so he enlisted Hollywood's finest, including Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, and Matt Damon.
So Ocean's 11 is a caper film or a heist film based on an early 1960s film that had great success back then. I don't think anyone remembered it by the time Clooney came to remake it. It was a forgotten film, and so it was really ripe for the picking. A great story.
Soderbergh was able to take this pretty straightforward idea of a very charismatic character bringing together a gang of sort of motley crew to carry off this heist, and he took what is, I think, quite a simple story, but just did it with such elegance and such charm, and casting Clooney as the centerpiece of this amazing cast, including Brad Pitt and Matt Damon and Bernie Mac, and just the most kind of 2000s powerhouse cast you can imagine. It's such a feat of not only performance but directing, and it's just such a fun film to watch, particularly with people who haven't seen it before, because when you know how it's going to go, you kind of feel like you're in on the job a little bit. You're kind of part of it, even though you're sat there in the audience.
It's never been done before. What's the target? When was the last time you were in Vegas? You want to knock over a casino. 3 casinos? Vegas, huh?
Vegas?
Vegas.
Fantastic.
The heist is impossible.
Casino security cannot be beaten. You're out of your minds.
Exactly.
You are up to something, Danny. What? You're pulling a job, aren't you? You're a thief and a liar.
I only lied about being a thief.
It's something that I think really elevated the heist film to something that could be slick and cool, but also charming and sexy, and it's something that not many other directors have been able to pull off since. And I think that a lot of that is down to Soderbergh, and it's down to Clooney, and down to their kind of easiness together as a duo. And certainly I think it's maybe the best heist film ever made. It's still, to this day, when I watch them all standing at the Bellagio fountain after the heist, it gives me goosebumps every time. I think it is the pinnacle of what is possible from a heist movie.
George Clooney's career in Hollywood has been nothing short of remarkable, marked by a blend of exceptional talent and relentless determination. After achieving worldwide success with Ocean's 11 in 2001, Clooney took on a transformative role in the 2005 film Syriana, a political thriller written and directed by Stephen Gaghan.
Syriana was directed by Stephen Gaghan, who was one of Soderbergh's close friends and collaborators. He'd worked on Traffic, and it's quite a complex film about Middle Eastern politics. George Clooney's character is a veteran CIA agent who is employed onto this detail, which ends up kind of being embroiled in this whole corruption case within the Middle East. And to play the role, Clooney had gained quite a significant amount of weight, about 30 pounds, to play this CIA agent. And he suffered quite a bad injury on set. I think when they were filming the kind of key moment, which is a big explosion scene within the film, and he ended up damaging his spine and had spinal fluid coming out of his nose, which sounds horrifying to think about, but to his credit, finished filming the film and then went and got surgery to fix it. So he really suffered for his art in Syriana, but he did win an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, and I think a lot of people do consider it one of his finest roles, so it wasn't all for nothing.
And the Oscar goes to George Clooney in Syriana.
This is the first Academy Award and third nomination tonight for George Clooney. This is the first time a nominee in the directing category is also nominated in an acting category for another film.
Wow. Wow. All right, so I'm not winning director.
After participating in politically charged and historical films like Syriana and The Good German, Clooney's growing interest in political and humanitarian issues became even more evident. In 2007, he co-created a poignant documentary with his father, traveling to Darfur to capture the harsh realities of the genocide taking place there. This powerful film served as a clarion call for global awareness and action, highlighting Clooney's deep commitment to humanitarian causes.
I don't need, people to get people who are already agreeing with me. We need to rally people who don't. So I hope that it's a march about peace. That's what I want.
In 2008, Clooney's political engagement took another significant step forward as he supported Barack Obama's presidential campaign. Clooney was vocal about urging the new administration to intensify efforts and resolve the humanitarian crisis in Darfur, demonstrating his willingness to leverage his celebrity for meaningful advocacy.
That you, an actor with a pretty good day job, is so troubled by what is going on in South Sudan.
Because there's a massive atrocities are going on there. It's not just that people are being displaced. 5 million people have been displaced in South Sudan. There's hundreds of thousands of people being killed, and there's policies towards rape. It's very hard to let that go, and and you feel as if they have nothing. There isn't the kind of resources in the United States or here to follow up and find these the people who are helping to support these criminals who are living 15 kilometers from here in a nice house.
So is it about shaming these individuals? They're going to fancy London restaurants, and
right.
You want their names out there?
Absolutely, and if you read the report, some of their names are out there. And there will be more. This is just the beginning.
During this time, George Clooney increasingly stepped behind the camera, directing a growing number of projects that clearly reflected his political convictions and personal values. By taking on meaningful films, Clooney showcased his dedication to causes he believed in, using his platform to advocate for significant social and political issues.
In the 2000s, Clooney showed that he was increasingly interested in directing films. So he directed a number of films, The Monuments Men, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, Good Night and Good Luck. I think the best that can be said for his films as director is that they're worthy. They're all quite serious projects in which he clearly has something to say. But like a lot of worthy dramas, they're just a little slow. They lack a bit of pace, and he hasn't found a lot of box office success as a director.
I think that Clooney's passion for storytelling maybe doesn't always transfer across as a director in the way it does as an actor. But I think that there's so much heart in his films, even when I don't necessarily think it's a good film. I really just appreciate that he is out there doing his own thing. And I think that something like Good Night and Good Luck is an incredibly hard proposition as a film fan, and he manages to make it engaging. So I think it's great that he is still so committed to telling stories as well as to starring in films. But for me, nothing will ever beat seeing him on screen, and I wish that he would do more of that if it means we have to sacrifice a few quite mediocre George Clooney directing gigs.
Clooney's diverse talents shone brightly again when he lent his voice to the title character in Wes Anderson's animated feature, Fantastic Mr. Fox, a story based on the novel of the same name by Roald Dahl.
So Fantastic Mr. Fox was a stop-motion film directed by Wes Anderson, who is known for making films including The Royal Tenenbaums and The Grand Budapest Hotel, and he has a very distinctive visual style which is very elaborate and very detailed, and often features these really big, quite complicated casts. And Fantastic Mr. Fox was his first full-scale animated film, and it took them about 3 or 4 years to make it. And I think that George Clooney's casting as Mr. Fox was such a playful choice on Wes Anderson's part. I think it must have been inspired by him appearing in Ocean's 11, because it's so hard to separate this character who is stealing in order to feed his family from this character who is stealing in order to kind of get revenge on an old enemy. And there's a lot of kind of similarities, I guess, in between the plots, which you wouldn't maybe expect.
Bogus, Bunce, and Bean, 3 of the meanest, nastiest, ugliest farmers in his valley.
What was that?
They're digging us out.
But they're about to discover...
Oh, Foxy. Is help on the way?
He's one fox.
I've got an idea.
You can't out-fox.
Mole, what do you got?
I can see in the dark.
We can use that. Rabbit, I'm fast. Badger, demolitions expert.
What? Since when? Here, put these bandit hats on.
I don't have a bandit hat, but I modified this tube sock. We look good. Yeah.
I think that his casting was a stroke of genius because Clooney does have a very distinctive voice and is very able to deliver all this kind of very quick, very complex dialogue with such ease. And playing against someone like Meryl Streep, I think it was just such an incredibly well-cast film and really managed to appeal not only to kids as an animated film about cute animals, but to adults because they had the kind of meta layer of, oh, it's George Clooney doing Ocean's 11 with animals, which I think really appealed to a lot of people. But it also managed to maintain its own kind of identity and be kind of something completely different. By the end of the 2000s, Clooney had already established himself as one of the biggest actors in the world, and he started and finished the decade with a heist film in Ocean's 11 and Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I think proves his kind of versatility and how widely associated with the Ocean's franchise he had become by this point. But I think that the decade was a real period of success for Clooney and really meant that by the time it finished, he was seen as one of the biggest stars in the world.
After his captivating performance in the critically acclaimed film Gravity, George Clooney began to shift his focus away from acting. He started to prioritize his passion for directing and producing, seeking to tell stories from behind the camera rather than in front of it. This change marked a significant turning point in Clooney's illustrious career, as he explored new creative avenues and took on a variety of impactful projects.
Throughout the 2010s, I think that Clooney's career does sort of take a downward turn, and the films that he's making, both behind the camera and in front of the camera, are a little less successful. But I think that he's still trying new things. Something like Tomorrowland, which he directed based on the Disney ride of the same name, was a really big swing for him, and I just think it wasn't maybe the right fit. But it proves that he still was very committed to trying out new things, and something like Suburbicon, again, a film that had a lot of kudos behind it, in that it was written by the Coen brothers, who Clooney was friends with. On paper, it sounded like it would have been the perfect project because he had Matt Damon, he had Oscar Isaac, he had this incredible, complex and fun, zany plot. But it all just kind of didn't come together in the end. And I think that it was definitely a bit of a downturn period for him. But at the same time, it was around then that he met his wife and started a family. So I don't think that Clooney probably felt the effects of it too badly. I think that he was quite glad to have something else in his life to focus on.
In 2014, Clooney's personal life took a transformative turn when he became engaged to British-Lebanese human rights lawyer Amal Alamuddin. The couple's shared passion for campaigning and supporting similar causes forged a strong bond between them. Clooney often expressed how their mutual dedication to humanitarian work strengthened their relationship, making it a central aspect of their life together.
Throughout most of his career, George Clooney was known as a confirmed bachelor. He dated many people, some famous, some not, but he didn't seem to be very interested in settling down and getting married until he met his wife, Amal, who is a human rights lawyer and who shared some of his interest in social causes.
It seemed like a really interesting partnership because they'd met because of his humanitarian work and predominantly because of the Monuments Men, which is a bit of a strange way to meet someone. But it turned out that they were both very interested in the restitution of the Elgin marbles to Greece, which is something that Clooney had spoken out about at the time of the film's release and angered quite a lot of high-up British people, including Boris Johnson.
They married in 2017, and by all accounts, it is one of the happiest of Hollywood marriages. And they now have two children together and keep their lives very, very private. Whereas I think previously his private life was very public. It was often in magazines and often discussed. They are now quite a private family.
Following the birth of his twins, Ella and Alexander, George Clooney chose to step back from the limelight, taking a 3-year hiatus from major film roles. During this period, he dedicated his creative energy to the television series Catch-22, serving as a director and taking on a minor acting role. This project allowed Clooney to stay connected to the industry without the demands of headline movie roles, giving him the space to focus on his growing family.
So Catch-22 is a miniseries based on Joseph Heller's book, which is kind of regarded as one of the great anti-war novels. And it's been unsuccessfully realised a few times, but this miniseries that Clooney was involved in was pretty highly regarded and pretty successful. And I think that it demonstrates kind of Clooney's commitment to, again, like incredibly ambitious storytelling and this sort of personal interest he has in World War II history, which is a very dad interest to have, but we see it again with the Monuments Men. It's something that clearly interests him and that he sees a lot of value in.
First of all, don't you think there's never really a bad time to talk about the absurdity of war, and there's never a bad time to talk about trying to beat the system, because the system pretty much always wins, and I think most people feel that way. I also feel like we're facing a pretty absurd time in our lives. You know, all of us, all in every country around the world right now. You've seen it in the Philippines, you see it in Orban in Hungary, and you're seeing it pretty much everywhere. United States, obviously. So I think anytime we're able to laugh about and remind ourselves that these things are temporary, is probably a good thing to do.
Do you feel a sort of a personal responsibility as an artist, as a filmmaker, to spread that kind of message, or poke holes in these bubbles a bit?
Well, my job as a storyteller I've always felt that way, and sometimes you're successful with it, and sometimes you're not. But that's been my choice in how I like to be creative, and it's also been my choice in how I like to live my life and other things. So, it's worked out okay.
Catch-22 was really regarded for its performances and for its ambition, and I think that Clooney very smartly decided to take quite a small role, quite a pivotal but small role as Lieutenant Sheitzkov, and this was a good example of Clooney working behind the scenes to get a project made that he felt very passionately about.
But George Clooney's dedication to justice goes beyond his cinematic achievements. While he highlights important issues through the films he directs, Clooney also actively participates in numerous activist causes. He tirelessly supports minority groups, using his stardom to bring public awareness.
So besides his acting, Clooney has become very well known for his interest in promoting human rights and philanthropy across the world, and he's become a huge advocate for refugees and for LGBTQ rights. And we see him a lot of times really putting his money where his mouth is and being one of the people who really does step up. And alongside Amal Clooney, he established the Clooney Foundation for Justice, which focuses on promoting global justice and helping education about human rights violations and really trying to actively change the world rather than just talking about it.
Right now, we've had it, and we want to get at least somebody in there to protect these people so that if you've been lucky enough to survive rape and torture and murder and your family's burned to the ground, you should at least have the right to live.
The Clooney Foundation provides free legal support to victims of human rights abuses all over the world. And our aim is always the same, to protect the persecuted and to try to prosecute the perpetrators. Peace, like war, must be waged.
So I think it's incredible how much he has been willing to do with his time and with his money outside of Hollywood, just in terms of making the world a better place for everyone rather than just for actors.
After a few years of stepping back from acting, George Clooney made a highly anticipated return with Ticket to Paradise, co-starring Julia Roberts. The film proved to be a box office hit, grossing $168 million worldwide and earning generally positive reviews. Audiences were thrilled to see the beloved stars reunite on screen, rekindling their on-screen magic and charm. The following year, George Clooney embraced the director's chair for The Boys in the Boat, a captivating historical drama that vividly recounts the University of Washington's 1936 rowing team. Adapted from Daniel James Brown's best-selling book, the film chronicles the extraordinary journey of 9 working-class American youths who defied tremendous odds to compete in the Berlin Olympics.
What I knew was when I read it was, I loved the book, and I knew in order to make it, it had to be an old-fashioned movie. And I think that was sort of what you and I talked about yesterday. There's a vibe to this that says, you know, that reminds us of old-fashioned movies. You were talking about sort of this male energy. It's kind of a war film in that sense. You know, the guys all have to spend time together like they've done before. There's less emotionality. There's less of the, you know, talking about your feelings and more about just doing it, which is all just a style of filmmaking from really basically before the 60s, you know, that kind of style. And we wanted to tell a film like that and had to keep your eye on and focus on the idea of picking yourself up by your bootstraps.
Clooney's masterful direction breathes life into the socioeconomic hardships of the era and the intense physical and emotional demands of competitive rowing. With meticulous historical accuracy and dynamic cinematography, the film not only delivers an enthralling sports narrative, but also highlights the indomitable spirit of resilience and unity. Surprisingly, this mid-budget production has triumphed at the box office, grossing over $50 million domestically against a $40 million budget. Looking ahead, Clooney reteamed with Brad Pitt for the 2024 thriller Wolves.
He's just making a film with John Watts, who directed the Spider-Man movies, with Brad Pitt, which will be a really kind of fun reunion, I hope. And they're both playing fixers who get pitted against each other. So it sounds like it's taking both Pitt and Clooney back to their action days.
This highly anticipated reunion, marking their first on-screen collaboration since 2008, generated significant excitement, promising another captivating performance from Clooney as he continues to leave an indelible mark on Hollywood. George Clooney is far more than just a handsome face. He is a truly talented actor and director who has cemented his place as one of the greatest actors of the century. Beyond his remarkable film career, Clooney is a dedicated philanthropist. Alongside his wife, Amal, they founded their own charity, aiming to affect global change and support minority groups.
I think that Clooney will be remembered as this man who was able to balance doing incredible work on screen with arguably more important work off screen.
Clooney's passion for justice is evident in the roles he chooses and the films he directs. He consistently uses his art to voice important beliefs and advocate for causes close to his heart. Through his carefully selected projects, he showcases his values and seeks to inspire change, proving that his work is driven by more than just entertainment. Despite having industry connections, Clooney's journey to stardom was paved with perseverance.
Despite having relatives who were actors and kind of a father who was a little bit connected in the industry, he actually had to work quite hard to get his big break.
This journey highlights his determination and resilience, qualities that have contributed to his enduring success and influence. George Clooney's versatile career and unwavering commitment to philanthropy make him an influential figure both in Hollywood and beyond. His ability to blend talent, passion, and advocacy ensures that his legacy will endure for generations to come.